Millions of years ago, the earliest primate ancestors carried a thick coat of fur from head to toe. Back then, hair meant survival. It trapped a layer of air close to the skin and slowed heat from escaping into cooler nights and shaded forests. Without that insulation, a small body lost warmth fast. Fur acted like built-in clothing, and it worked every hour, without choice. That same fur also served as a first line of protection. It softened scratches from branches, reduced minor cuts, and helped shield skin from biting insects and rough surfaces. But hair did more than block and buffer. Each strand grew from a follicle packed with nerves. When something brushed the coat, those nerves fired quickly. A tiny movement on the skin became information. That information mattered because it arrived early. A crawling parasite, a shifting leaf, a predator's light touch, even a change in wind across the body all produced signals. Fur turned the entire surface into a sensing net, warning the animal before damage happened. Warmth, protection, awareness. Hair did not exist for style. It existed because bodies needed help reading and surviving the world. Over time, some hominin ancestors started carrying less and less dense body fur. It did not happen all at once, and it did not happen evenly. But the direction stayed clear. More skin, less covering. That shift changed the rules of survival. Fur that once held heat close now trapped it. In warmer, more open places, moving with a thick coat became a liability. The body started facing a new enemy, overheating. As fur thinned, the problem did not simply disappear with it. Less hair meant less insulation, but it also meant less shade. Under strong sun, bare skin absorbed heat fast. It also took direct damage that fur had once softened. The same change that helped release heat also exposed the body to a harsher outside world. Skin could not rely on a full-body blanket anymore, and hair alone no longer solved the balance between cooling and protection. That created a tight evolutionary trade-off. Keep more fur and risk overheating during long activity. Lose more fur and accept higher sun load and greater exposure. There was no perfect middle ground. Every step toward hairlessness raised the stakes because the body had to stay active in the heat without burning up. This pressure pushed hominins toward a different kind of cooling system, one that did not depend on a thick coat at all. A new cooling system took over. Instead of relying on a thick coat to manage temperature, the body leaned on sweat. Tiny glands released water onto the skin, and as it evaporated, it pulled heat away. That meant cooling happened while moving, not just while resting in shade. It changed the rules. Heat stopped being an automatic limit and became something the body actively managed. Skin changed along with it. With less fur, sunlight hit directly, so the surface needed better protection and better control of water loss. The outer layers toughened in key ways, and pigments shifted over time to handle intense exposure. This was not a small tweak. It was a full redesign for life in open heat, where staying cool mattered every hour, not only during the hottest moments. And hair, stripped of its old job as all-over insulation, got reassigned. It no longer acted like a blanket across the whole body. Instead, it began drifting towards specialized tasks that could still pay for their cost. Some patches stayed, others thinned, and the overall pattern started to look less like fur and more like a map. Hair stopped being the main temperature tool and became something more selective. Once most of the body stayed bare and sweat handled the heavy work, one patch of hair still mattered. The head took direct sun for hours. It held the brain, and it held a lot of blood close to the surface. So scalp hair stood out as a leftover that earned its place. It acted like built-in shade, breaking up sunlight before it hit skin. But the benefit went beyond shade. Scalp hair also buffered temperature swings. In harsh heat, it slowed the sun's energy reaching the scalp. In wind or cooler nights, it slowed heat loss from a place that lost heat fast. It worked like a thin roof with air trapped underneath. The body stayed mostly hairless because that openness kept sweat evaporation efficient. That trade-off mattered during long travel in hot landscapes. A hairy body would have blocked airflow and held heat, turning cooling into a struggle. A mostly bare body kept the engine running. Yet the head still needed protection from constant sun and sudden chill. Scalp hair filled that gap. It became a specialization. Keep the head steadier while the rest of the skin stayed ready to shed heat. As dense fur faded, the body did not become hairless. It became selective. A thin scatter of hairs stayed behind, and that leftover pattern acted like a kind of fingerprint across the skin. Each hair sat in a follicle wired into nerves, and the system changed its job. It no longer tried to warm the whole body. It started sampling the world, one tiny strand at a time. A single bent hair told a story. When something brushed the arm, the hair moved first, and the follicle's nerves fired before the skin fully felt contact. That early warning helped the brain judge direction and speed, and it made light touch easier to notice. Some follicles also linked into pain and irritation pathways, so a sharp tug or sting turned into an instant message. Small signals arrived fast. That sensitivity carried a defensive payoff. Parasites did not need to bite to matter. They only needed to land and start crawling. Sparse body hairs amplified that movement, triggering scratching and swatting before damage spread. Insects, plant spines, and grit all produced their own signature patterns of tug and tickle, and the nervous system learned them. Hair shifted into micro-alarms. Less coverage delivered more information. Hair had not disappeared from the human body. It had waited for a new moment. Puberty brought that moment, when rising hormones pushed certain follicles to change their behavior. Soft, almost invisible hairs became thicker and darker. Under the arms and around the genitals, new growth spread in clear patterns. The timing mattered. It arrived with sexual maturity, so the body carried a visible marker that childhood had ended. This change had not happened evenly in everyone. Hormones acted like a volume knob, and different bodies turned it to different levels. In many males, testosterone drove facial hair to expand across the upper lip, chin, jaw, and cheeks. In many females, the same areas stayed mostly fine-haired, while other regions still thickened at puberty. The result created sexual dimorphism, hair patterns that separated adult bodies into recognizable groups at a glance. Facial hair did more than fill space on the face. It signaled age, maturity, and, indirectly, reproductive status, because it tended to track the hormones linked to sexual development. A beard could not guarantee strength or fertility, but it advertised that the machinery of adulthood had switched on. Underarm and pubic hair carried their own message, tied to sexual maturity and scent. Hair had shifted again, from sensing the world to announcing the self. Early human groups did not just live with hair. They worked on it. As stone tools improved, sharp edges cut more than meat and hide. They trimmed, they scraped, they plucked. A loose strand stopped being an accident and became something a person could manage. That changed the meaning of hair fast. Biology set the starting point, but hands and tools started setting the final look. Once grooming became possible, it became useful. Shorter hair reduced lice and ticks, and cleaning got easier. Removing hair from certain areas lowered odor and irritation, especially when people wore skins or early fabrics. Cutting also helped with heat, work, and fighting. And then the next step arrived. If hair could be removed for comfort, it could also be kept on purpose as a choice. Deliberate styling followed. People tied hair back, braided it, coated it with fats, clays, or pigments, and shaped facial hair to send a message without speaking. A beard could be emphasized or erased. Scalp hair could be hidden, extended, or decorated. The key shift was simple. Hair stopped being only a trait you inherited and started being a feature you controlled. Hair stopped being just a personal choice and started acting like a public label. In many societies, rulers and elites kept the power to decide what proper hair looked like. Certain cuts signaled rank, jobs, or family standing. If the wrong person wore the wrong style, it read like a challenge. Hair became an easy test. One glance and someone sorted you. Religion and moral codes tightened that test. Some communities required covered hair, others demanded it stay uncut, and others treated shaving as cleanliness and devotion. Facial hair also split into rules. A beard could mark piety, wisdom, or manhood, while in another place it could be seen as disorder. These standards did not stay private. They turned into expectations enforced by neighbors and leaders. Then law stepped in, and hair became politics with penalties. Authorities banned styles linked to rival groups, punished improper grooming, or forced hair changes to mark shame and control. Some governments even taxed hair and beards, turning a personal feature into revenue and compliance. A haircut could become a fine. A beard could become a court case. Hair carried consequences. Hair stopped being only tradition and rule and became something measured. Under the microscope, a hair shaft looked less like a simple thread and more like a record of structure, layers, pigment, damage. Dermatology treated the scalp as living skin with its own cycle, growth, rest, shedding, explaining why loss happened in patterns, not at random. One follicle behaved like a tiny factory, and science started timing its shifts. Then genetics pushed the story deeper. Variation in curl, thickness, and color traced back to inherited instructions mixed with hormones and age. Researchers linked some kinds of baldness to specific risk patterns in families, and they mapped how hormones changed follicles over time. The old question, why did one person keep dense hair while another thinned early, felt less like fate and more like biology with causes, triggers and limits, and industry moved fast to translate that knowledge into products and promises. Mass-market shampoos, dyes, straighteners and regrowth treatments spread the idea that hair could be managed like any other routine. Salons multiplied, techniques got branded, and normal hair started looking like a purchased result. The pressure followed. If science explained variation, advertising sold a fix, and a new kind of anxiety grew around what hair should look like. By the present day, hair had become something people managed on purpose, not just something they inherited. It grew, but it also got cut, colored, straightened, curled, hidden, or highlighted. A strand on the head could signal belonging, rebellion, professionalism, faith, or fun, sometimes all at once. The same biology sat underneath, but the meaning changed fast. Hair turned into a public message that stayed attached to the body. That pressure made hair a daily decision. People measured it against mirrors, trends, and expectations, and entire industries pushed answers in bottles, blades, and treatments. Some chased uniform standards, others rejected them and built identity through texture, length, and shape. Even absence carried meaning when hair got removed. What looked like personal style often carried social risk, especially when certain hair types got treated as problems to fix instead of traits to respect. Yet under all the styling, hair still did old work. Scalp hair still buffered heat and sunlight over the head. Eyelashes and brows still helped block sweat and debris. Sparse body hairs still fed the nervous system tiny signals about touch, movement, and irritation, and they still helped spot parasites early. Modern life made hair symbolic, but it never stopped being biological. It stayed fashion and function at the same time.